It's China's mega project, the New Silk Road, a trade network between China and the rest of the world, which could turn the old world order on its head.
我们坚信，一个更加开放的中国，将同世界形成更加良性的互动，带来更加进步和繁荣的中国和世界。
China is investing in bridges, ports, railway tracks, and roads around the globe. Over 70 nations are already part of the New Silk Road. Europe sees the Chinese as welcome investors. The port of Piraeus has been under Chinese ownership for several years, and the Chinese are now also showing interest in Trieste, in Italy.
Italy is of great importance for China. It's at the center of the Mediterranean, just off the coast of Africa, and a strategic point for the New Silk Road.
For the Chinese, Piraeus is the emerald of the Mediterranean.
Critics warn that China is using the New Silk Road to cement its power around the world and divide Europe.
When you make an economic agreement with a country that doesn't respect the human rights, you are dealing with human rights, because it means that you don't care much.
The coronavirus pandemic has brought life in Grotto, a resort in northeastern Italy, to a virtual standstill. But even though few people visit his beach bar, Riccardo Ronchiato is still glad to be back at work. He and his family were the first people in the resort to be infected with COVID-19.
We felt like lepers. It's a small community. In summer, it's a well-known resort, but we locals are all alone on the island in winter. And of course, on an island, everyone knows everyone else. That's why it was such a serious issue for me at first, having an illness when nobody knew what it would bring.
But help coming in from China gave Riccardo and his family a feeling that they weren't alone. China sent 31 tons of urgently needed equipment, ventilation machines, personal protective clothing, masks and medication, and also medical staff. Soft power from China. Some called it the Silk Road of Health.
I felt more safe because China came to help us. Look, if someone has already faced the same problems before you and found solutions that you maybe haven't yet, it does give you a feeling of security. Because you see these problems building up and you don't know how to solve them.
China as the savior in times of need. Whether it was politically motivated or not, the symbolism worked for Riccardo and his family. In the early stages of the pandemic, no help was forthcoming from the European Union.
We saw a China that really experienced a catastrophe in the beginning. The pandemic in China was really devastating. But still, they offered us help. It showed us that they were prepared, that they're a power, and they're afraid of nothing and nobody.
Piraeus is Greece's most important port. It's been owned by the Chinese since 2016. China started investing in the port after the 2008 financial crisis and has made it an economic success. Over the last 12 years, cargo handling has increased tenfold. The dock workers here on Pier 1 were here before the Chinese arrived, and saw the changes firsthand.
I'm proud to be a dock worker. It's an honest job, and with it, I've managed to feed my family. I'm satisfied.
Fotis Panagiotopoulos has been working at the port since 2005. Like everyone else here, he demonstrated against the takeover of the port by the Chinese state company COSCO.
Everything has been a mess since the privatization. Ever since the investor got involved here and is only interested in profit and nothing else, our situation has changed. Before the port was privatized, our work was much better and easier. We worked in fixed groups back then, always as a team of two. Now we don't have enough people, so that's no longer possible. Now we're forced to do the work of two men.
One shift in 6 was canceled. New jobs were created, but hardly any of them offered the same social protections as the workers previously had. These proud Greek dock workers now work in a port which is no longer their own.
We think it was a strategic mistake to privatize the biggest port in the country. Greece is a country with a huge number of islands. The ports are essential, not only economically, but socially. They keep people connected.
Greece was forced to privatize the port as part of EU demands to tackle the Greek debt crisis. Georgios Gogos and his men still blame Germany and the EU for it. Gogos is now trying to save what he can and is fighting to protect his people's rights.
The best man at my wedding got a state pension.
Yes, because they calculated how long you had worked for the port when it was still state-owned.
But what will happen to us now?
The longest-serving workers, so not our rank.
No, I'm telling you, my best man got a state pension. What will happen when everything is fully
because he had
privatized?
already retired, right?
No.
It won't be like that at all.
But Gogo's union no longer represents all the dock workers, so it's hard for him and his men to fight against the threats of outsourcing or temporary contracts.
I don't know how much longer we can keep this working model with permanent staff, dignified work, and job security.
We request an interview with the port's Chinese managers. But it's the Greek press officer who explains to us why Piraeus is so important for China's new Silk Road.
The port of Piraeus is the first large European port after the crossing of Suez Channel. This is very important for the shipping companies in order to visit the port and to use it as a transshipment hub. So the very large vessels, the mother vessels as we call them, starting their route from East Asia towards Europe, visit the port of Piraeus, leave here the cargo, whatever it is, containers or cars, and then smaller vessels that we call them feeder vessels take the cargo and redistribute it to many other ports of Mediterranean and Black Sea.
The dock workers are skeptical. Only 70 to 80% of the containers are transshipped, which won't create any new jobs. The profits stay with the owner of the port, the Chinese state company COSCO. None of it goes to the Greeks.
I think it's all about the expansion of Chinese capitalism. The Chinese state has a lot of money, and this is its way of expanding and asserting its status, its position in the world. China is a world power. You can't overlook that or be indifferent to it.
you walk in the streets in Italy and then you walk in the streets in Shanghai, you don't need to do any analysis to understand why countries grow at 0%, like here, and why some other countries grow at 8%, as it did in the past China. You just see immediately. And I've been witness in 10 years of really important social and economic changes under my eyes. I've come back to Europe and I don't see any changes. Next time I go to Shanghai, after a few months, I will look at the underground map because there will be new lines.
Michele Garacci is known as Mr. China. After working as an investment banker and spending 10 years in Shanghai as a professor of economics, he became Undersecretary of State in Italy's Ministry of Economic Development and negotiated the Silk Road deal with China. He used to commute constantly between China and Italy. But now, the coronavirus has forced him to do business with the Chinese via video calls.
I hope so too. I'm Sicilian. I'm pinning my hopes on China, that the cooperation with China will help the tourist industry to grow in Sicily. Last year we had President Xi Jinping here. Sicily wants to see more Chinese tourists. The Chinese are very curious about Italy.
Garacci no longer holds political office. The government he was part of only lasted for 15 months. But the letter of intent that he negotiated with China is still valid.
When I came in, I took on this project and actually delivered it. So accelerated the process, made the final agreement with the Chinese counterparts, and we implemented and we signed it. And I do think that this is the best economic opportunity that Italy has to cooperate with China, doing business together.
This deal with China alarmed Europe. Italy is, after all, one of the EU's founding members, as well as part of NATO. Many saw the signing of this contract as a break with the old alliances. The logic of the Italian government back then was purely economic. They said everyone else was doing business with China too, even if they had no official agreement.
There is absolutely no contradiction and no conflict with European strategy. If someone worries about the fact that if China invests, then you have to give them back something. China has invested in Germany, Holland, Belgium, France, Spain, Malta, Istanbul and Greece and UK. All ports in Europe have Chinese ownership.
Giada Massetti is a sinologist and author who lived in China for 6 years and observed the events around the new Silk Road development with a critical eye. She thinks the Italian government was trying to create an economic advantage for itself, but underestimated the plan's political dimensions.
The acknowledgement of this political project by a member of the G7 had great propaganda value, also in China itself. The new Silk Road is quite clearly an economic project, and like all projects in history, in China and the USA, it's not an act of charity. They are pursuing their own interests.
It's obvious that China is trying to gain a global foothold through key infrastructure investments such as ports. Trieste in the northeast of Italy could also become an important logistical center for the Chinese. Francesco Parisi is a businessman who's currently planning to bring a new investor on board to build a second container terminal in Trieste.
The estimate of the minimum investment necessary to further expand to have a reasonable container terminal is 300 million euro. We are ready to discuss with other parties if they have an interest to further develop. I can easily tell you that we have been discussing for a long time with Chinese interest.
The port of Trieste is set to expand further. Until now, it has only handled 790,000 container ships a year. By comparison, Piraeus handles 6 times as much cargo. Francesco Parisi's firm has been involved in the transportation business in Europe and the rest of the world for almost 200 years. Along with his son, he's the 8th generation to run the business. The company has survived 2 world wars. But today's challenges are just as great. And now you need the routes to Asia to stay competitive, he says.
It is not that we are giving preference to Chinese business partners rather than other. The reality is that China has grown and is the trading partner number 1 in the world. And if we are involved in logistics, which is connected to international trading, you cannot simply close your eyes in front of what has developed. You try to participate. So this is the simple answer.
Parisi and his son have invested in China themselves and make 2/3 of their turnover with Asian customers. In spite of their old European traditions, they have long become a part of the new Chinese Silk Road.
Europe is not anymore the center of the world. It's not long time. So we have to take opportunities where they arise and where we find, and especially where we find people who are willing also to share the same values, that are not only make money but behave with some values.
The problem for the port of Trieste is that China could be an opportunity, because China intends to make investments, of course, and Italy needs them. At the same time, we have to be very careful when we make any deal with China. Its economic power is vast and can be overwhelming.
Petros Chang is waiting for visitors from China.
I'm like a bridge between 2 countries, between 2 peoples. The Chinese really want to come to Greece because they want to learn a lot about the culture of ancient Greece, the mythology, the history. That's why they love Greece so much. The 2 countries are similar. They both have a lot of history. The roots of the Eastern world are in China. The roots of the Western world are in Greece.
Before the coronavirus hit, it was always busy around the foot of the Acropolis. Chang had groups every day. The number of Chinese tourists in Greece had been growing rapidly, and some 800,000 were expected this year. Now, because of the coronavirus pandemic, the stream has dried up completely. Tourism is an integral factor in the new Chinese Silk Road. Petros Chang says tourists from China bring money and often become long-term investors.
First, we have to wait until the coronavirus is over. Then, Greece will need capital, and China has capital. The Chinese state really has a lot of money, and it wants to invest it in Greece. China has come to Greece as a friend, not the way the West colonized Asia or Africa in the past. China's approach is, we come here, we invest, and it's a win-win situation for us both.
The real estate lobby is profiting from the deal with the Chinese more than most other sectors. To attract foreign money, the Greek government started issuing so-called golden visas in 2013.
So welcome. This is the apartment on the 5th floor.
Welcome to this lovely apartment in the heart of downtown Athens. It's surrounded by some of the best areas in Athens.
It used to be with 2 bedrooms, and now we are fixing a 3rd bedroom and an extra bathroom.
This is the living room, nice and spacious, fully furnished. There are 3 bedrooms like this.
It will be more practical for a bigger family, or even if it's not a bigger family, they can use it like as an office space.
The kitchen is fully equipped.
And we are going to have the kitchen here with a small island, and here it will be an extra space that they can use the way they want. Here I'm gonna show you the balcony.
It comes with a balcony that has a lovely view to enjoy your first cup of coffee of the day.
You can have barbecue. Here you can, it's like huge, the space is really big, and they can get all this space and the sun and that balcony and that view with not that much money for them, at least.
Greece has issued 6,000 golden visas to the Chinese in the last 5 years, and sold a lot of property too.
Golden visa changed the real estate in Greece. The Chinese came in Greece, they were the first foreign investors that they left their money here, that they paid for properties, because after the Greek financial crisis, after it started 2008, I can say, but 2010, 2012, no one was buying. Like, all the properties were falling down.
Most of the Chinese owners don't want to appear in front of the camera. Some have come to Europe for political reasons. Others are cautious towards the media. It's an open secret that money laundering and corruption are also an issue. The EU has sharply criticized the program.
The clients that we have are usually from the rapidly emerging Chinese middle class. They come here because they want to secure a future in Europe. They want to give their children the opportunity to live here. They want to give themselves the opportunity to retire here.
A lawyer in Athens puts us in touch with a client from Shanghai who is in the middle of a legal dispute over her flat in Athens. Her whole family laboriously saved up for the €290,000 apartment. Investment in Greece and freedom of travel within the entire Schengen area for the whole family sounds attractive, even in times of the coronavirus.
And then another 15 days.
I like the Greek weather and lifestyle. Greece is a country with a long history. With this visa, I can buy a piece of this lifestyle. There are a lot of Chinese making this investment, including in my circle of friends.
But the coronavirus pandemic has put a damper on the real estate market, and the Golden Visa program has now been dropped. Unlimited travel and a globalized world where you can commute between Shanghai and Athens have been put on hold. But the estate agents don't think it spells the end of this lucrative market.
I think that after the recovery that we are expecting soon, the Chinese clients are going to come here and keep buying properties like they did before. And as you said, the Chinese middle class is rapidly expanding. So I don't see any reason why this may stop.
In an increasingly globalized world, the fish market in Athens is still bucking the trend and dealing mainly in locally caught produce. Most goods come to Europe from Asia through the Suez Canal. EU citizens profit enormously from cheap Chinese imports. But a sudden shortage of personal protective equipment during the coronavirus pandemic has highlighted Europe's dependence on Asian imports.
China was the workbench of the world. We used to go there, get goods cheaply, and exploit Chinese workers. But as we were doing that, the Chinese were learning from us and starting to do it themselves. They have overtaken us in many areas of technology.
And that's just how China's new Silk Road got going. Investments in ports, bridges, or roads all serve to bring goods to customers. The US is still the EU's most important trading partner, but trade with China has tripled in the last 20 years. China has been investing in the port of Piraeus since 2008 and became the majority shareholder there in 2016. It's the perfect gateway to Europe. Over the last few years, the Chinese have turned Piraeus into the biggest port in the Mediterranean. And they're planning to make it the biggest port in Europe, pledging 600 million euros of additional investment in the next few years.
I was born and raised in Piraeus. It's a city I love. I have felt connected with the sea and the port since I was small. This place where we are now is important to us, not only for its charm and atmosphere, now it's deserted, but because it's a park with open access to the sea, and because it was us who managed to keep it that way.
Anastasia Franciszkaki believes that the old port area belongs to the city's residents and has long been campaigning to get them access to it again. She's the left-wing Syriza Party's maritime policy spokeswoman and is skeptical about the Chinese commitment. She believes massive investments by Beijing would also have political consequences for her country.
Some of the consequences do not depend on the government that is in power. For example, when the EU wanted to pass certain resolutions regarding China's expansion in the South China Sea, we had a left-wing government here that had its doubts about it.
EU member Greece broke a political taboo by siding with the Chinese. Greece has also been silent about Beijing's actions in Hong Kong. Money, Franciszkaki says, makes you dependent. She's particularly worried about the EU's divisions over China. But the realization that Europe has to speak to China with one voice is slowly gaining ground.
Europe has not yet reached a consensus on how it wants to deal with China or what its attitude towards China is. Europe has no clear analysis of what China is doing. China behaves differently from Western countries and is pursuing particular economic policies. Europe no longer has the tools that China has, namely state-owned enterprises. And China is clearly using these tools.
The corona crisis has highlighted Europe's lack of cohesion. Even Italians like Riccardo Ronchiato felt it. China exploited the divisions by sending aid to Italy. Europe eventually came up with investment programs. But small businesses like Riccardo's felt this help came too late.
Avrei voluto che ci fosse un'Europa unita come tutti vanno.
I would have really liked to have seen a united Europe, as everyone had predicted. A strong union with fundamental coordination.
Ci fosse stato un coordinamento generale.
I would have liked to have seen those with more opportunities to help the others. A true Europe.
Chi ne avesse di meno, che
But in the end, it didn't work out that way. Everyone closed their borders and said, wash your own dirty laundry at home.
I panni sporchi lavateveli in casa.
That really showed us that we can't talk about a single Europe.
Questo ha dimostrato che fondamentalmente non possiamo parlare di Europa.
Anyone who comes to Trieste can still experience the charm of the old Habsburg monarchy. 100 years ago, the port city was a trading hub to Eastern Europe. The Iron Curtain interrupted the links for decades. Now the city wants to return to its former glory and is hoping the Chinese will help it. When the Silk Road Agreement was signed in March 2019, Trieste was at the center of attention. Northern Italy was slated to become a major transshipment center for Chinese exports. Zeno D'Agostini, who is head of the Port Authority, thinks China's interest in Trieste is proof of its growing significance.
You see that the Eastern Europe is growing a lot. All these nations are very easily accessible by the port of Trieste. So, I think it is very simple. If you look at the map, you see that if you pass through Trieste and you go to Hungary, to Germany, to Austria, you arrive faster than passing from the northern range ports.
The city is investing even more in its rail network than in the port itself. Built over 100 years ago, its direct links to Eastern Europe are still there. They just have to be upgraded. But Trieste is also at pains to emphasize that although it welcomes investments from China, it has no intention of selling off the port lock, stock, and barrel.
What was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, only a problem, a matter of transport, became a geopolitical issue. No? If you sell the port authority, you say, okay, this part of the territory is no more my territory. And this was done in Greece. This is not what is happening here. The law here is the port authority, the president is Italian, I am directly governed by my minister, so we don't sell and we will not sell this strategic part of the port.
The port city on the Adriatic Sea has suddenly found itself in the midst of a global trade war. Every investment the Chinese make in Europe angers the U.S. and exacerbates the standoff between the U.S. and China. Francesco Parisi has decided on a partner to help Trieste expand. Not China, but a European investor, the Port of Hamburg. He stresses that this is a purely economic calculation, but he doesn't deny that political factors also played a role. Parisi remembers the Cold War and is worried about any new confrontation.
This confrontational situation and the worry of another Cold War is a matter of concern for me personally and for my business in general, but for me in general also as a citizen of the European Union. We consider international trade for sure a bridge. We consider to be helpful to keep and maintain peace.
The debate about the role Europe will play in the trade war between the U.S. and China is nothing new and is not limited to the economy.
I hope for some European leadership, because if not, Europe risks becoming the battlefield for China and the USA. Europe can be the third key player in the global arena. I hope that's what Europe decides to do.
Politicians in Rome are also gradually turning against China. Human rights violations haven't been a reason to cut down on business so far. but worldwide criticism is growing. These three members of parliament are part of a cross-party alliance on China. They want to see a tougher stance towards Beijing.
When you make an economic agreement with a country that doesn't respect the human rights, you are dealing with human rights, because it means that you don't care much.
We need a European initiative and not a single country initiative. So Europe is already too small to have a real relationship with China altogether. But one single country can't have a strong relationship with China, that's sure. So if you go in that interaction alone, as Italy, it's sure that you will lose that relationship. So I believe that is the most important mistake.
Above and beyond party politics, be they left-wing, centrist, or conservative, what unites these politicians is the worry that Europe is not speaking to China with one voice.
Because China is focusing on us, so we want to focus on China, because China has a very strong agenda with using any kind of energy and synergy to expand its influence over all the countries of the Western world, and therefore we must have an agenda too.
What is the kind of investment that we can have, or the kind of trade of scientific cooperation we have with the country which, in a systemic way, prevents any sort of cooperation? Even now, when we are talking, China is totally obscure and is the country of censorship about the real origin, nature, and consequences of the pandemic.
Europe is now coming to realize that China is no longer a purely economic power, but also a political one. Meanwhile, the dockworkers union in Piraeus has come to terms with its new Chinese bosses and is trying to negotiate workers' rights as best it can.
Over the last 10 years, our experience with the Chinese has been that they always negotiate as hard as they can and demand as much freedom as possible. But if you set your limits, if they come up against strong structures like a state or a trade union, then they respect that. They accept our limits.
The port of Piraeus will remain under Chinese control until 2052, when the lease expires, although it could, of course, be extended.
I think China already has enormous influence, and I don't think it needs any more. As a citizen of Piraeus, I would like to see the port returned to us, returned to Greece again, after the transfer for third-party use has expired.
The 2019 agreement between Italy and China has caused a lot of fuss, but now there are other investors who are pushing ahead with the development of the port of Trieste. Many entrepreneurs, however, have other worries right now.
We will have to see what COVID impact will be on the world trade, because this is still something no one has a clue about.
So for now, Italy is still part of the Silk Road, even though no Chinese money has flowed into Trieste so far.
I always say that we didn't become part of a Silk Road, of a Belt and Road initiative, but it is the opposite. They accept our vision of development. Some other places on the maritime Silk Road that they needed an idea of development, not only money. And the Chinese arrived with funds and ideas. We have our ideas, we know what Trieste can be.
Meanwhile, Michele Geraci, the man who engineered the deal in the first place, believes that the fear of China is totally exaggerated and could have disastrous consequences for Italy.
In my forecast, because of geopolitics, misunderstanding, I think the likely scenario that I have now is that Italy slows down on the cooperation with Asia, slows down on the cooperation with China. slows down on the development of technology, slows down on the development of infrastructure, ports, motorways, which are all the things that we need that we do not do by ourselves. And so Italy will fall back.